Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at Maze, Solve the World's Most Challenging Puzzle by Christopher Manson. This is a really fascinating book. It was released in 1985, and it is essentially a puzzle book, but it really has elements of almost like solo D&D, where you can travel through the book in a non-linear fashion, exploring from page to page, trying to navigate your way through this strange house and solve its riddles. Now, one of the things that really caught the world's attention and made this book a bit of a phenomenon at the time was the fact that there was a reward for solving it. $10,000 to whoever could solve the riddle of the maze first. And after the contest had run its course, no one had done it. Some people had solved the maze partially, and all of those people split the $10,000, but the final solution was not solved until later on. And even with the main solution solved, there are still many mysteries inside the book that people say still have not been solved to this day. There are groups online that continue to work and study this book, finding more and more secrets and depths within it. Here's the back cover of the book. As usual, I will put a link down in the description for where you can pick this up for yourself. There is a mysterious narrator who talks to you all throughout the book, showing you the different rooms that you can look at visually, and also you can hear him describe. And you have to put these clues, both visual and verbal, together to figure out where to go next. I've heard that this book went on to inspire quite a lot of games that came after it, including things like Myst and Riven, two of my favorite games, as well as the more recent Blue Prince game, which has become quite popular as of late. However, the book that it reminded me the most of is actually The Tomb of Horrors by Gary Gygax, because like that, it has these first-person perspectives of rooms that you can examine and figure out clues from. So I don't know if this drew inspiration from early Dungeons & Dragons, but it seems like a real possibility to me. All right, let's dive into the book's depths, but first, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Realm Fables Overland, an ingenious new system for hex crawling across a fantasy world. The Maps book contains huge realm maps for your party or solo adventure to explore. You can travel from biome to biome, zoom in and out of battle maps, and explore hexes in detail using the Oracle deck, which can rapidly generate local maps filled with prompts. Use the quest book to learn more about the region you're in. Just place it above your map book and flip to the same page to see random tables, lore, and encounters tailored to your current location. Check it out on Kickstarter right now using the link in the description. All right, so what do we get inside Maze? It's our cover page and our directions. I'll just read this so you can get a sense of what this book is all about. This is not really a book. This is a building in the shape of a book, a maze. Each numbered page depicts a room in the maze. The doors in each room lead to other rooms. For example, the room on page 1 has doors leading to rooms 20, 26, 41, and 21. Here's an example right here. So this would be the first room that you enter, and you can see all of these doors. If you enter one of these doors, then you simply turn to that page in the book, and you continue from there. Your challenge is to find your way from room 1 after the prologue to room 45, and then back to room 1 using the shortest possible path. If you use your head, you should be able to make the journey in only 16 steps. So this is the first puzzle that you need to solve. It's probably the easiest of all of them in the book, but it's still incredibly difficult. There are any number of clues in the drawings and in the story to help you choose the right door in each room. Clues in a series of rooms may relate to one another and may indicate a path. Other clues may refer to a specific door in a single room. Anything in this book might be a clue. Not all clues are necessarily trustworthy. I love this little hint because that could mean that maybe the cover is part of the solution. Maybe things on the back cover. Maybe things in this image on the title page are relevant to the solution. You never know. Once you've found the shortest path in and out of the maze, challenge yourself further. Go back and find the riddle hidden in room 45. That's the room at the center of the maze. The answer to that riddle is concealed somewhere on the shortest path. Now proceed to the prologue. Your guide awaits you. So there's really 3 puzzles here. Get to room 45 and back in only 16 moves. Decipher the riddle that is found inside room 45. And then the answer to that riddle is found by tracing the path that you have just created. There were clues along that path that give you the answer. The path to room 45 and back was the problem that was solved by a number of people before the end of the contest, but the answers to the riddles were not solved until later. Here's our prologue, The Maze. I met them at the gate, though I usually wait inside. Preoccupied with their own thoughts, impatient, like so many children, they didn't see who I really was. They never noticed my crown, my pain, the fire in my eyes. Like all the others, they think the maze was made for them. Actually, it is the other way around. They think I am some poet who will lead them through the symbols and spaces of this underworld. They think I will teach them lessons. They should call me Cerberus. I am the lesson. As I mentioned before, the story starts on page 1, but there's always some narration that goes along with it, because you're going to combine the information in the narration and in the picture to figure out what your next step is going to be, at least when it comes to that very first problem of getting to room 45. Now, I've owned this book for quite a while, and I've tried to work my way through some of it, and boy, it's like hitting a brick wall. This is not a typical puzzle book. This is extremely difficult, so it's not too surprising that almost no one was able to solve even the basic challenge during the initial run. I'll take you on a tour through the book here, and at the end of the video, I will do a little bit of spoilers where I will show you some of the solutions, which yes, I had to look up online. And that's not to try and ruin the book for you, it's just to give you a sense of how these puzzles tend to work. Of course, if you don't want any spoilers at all, you can simply skip that part of the video, but it could be very useful for someone who wants to know if this is the right kind of puzzle book for them, and to get a sense of how the author thought about puzzles and how he constructed this whole labyrinth. You can see why it reminded me a little bit of the design of the Tomb of Horrors, not because it's super dangerous, but because it has that first-person perspective of showing you an entire room and expecting you to examine the illustration to figure out where to go next, where the dangers are, and where the correct path is. The artwork has touches of Edward Gorey, perhaps, mixed with a little bit of maybe Chris Van Allsburg, the illustrator who did things like Jumanji. It has that silent, slightly surreal look to everything where it feels like there might be someone just out of the corner of your eye watching what you're doing. And I can certainly see why people thought that it inspired the game Myst as well. It has those elements of Victorian architecture mixed together with these large silent buildings, and the theme of exploration is very strong as well. I've played a number of choose your own adventure games and games like Fighting Fantasy, which are a bit more open-ended, but this takes that to an even further extreme where you can really go anywhere that you want and really set your own pace and puzzle over everything for as long as you feel like it. I feel like it could be especially great for role-playing game players who love to play solo D&D, because this is really kind of the ultimate solo game, especially if you like puzzle dungeons, of course. Now, people who are more experienced with puzzles might ask themselves, why is it so hard to get to room 45? Look, there's a door to room 45 right here. But the truth is that as you explore around, there are dead ends. There is a end state that you can run into, which is this room right here. If you reach here, notice that there are no doors. You're now stuck here forever. You got to go back to the beginning and try again. Probably the first solution that might come to someone's mind is, why don't you map it? These are all just nodes, so to speak. And each of these doors is a link to another node, which is another room. And indeed, that is what most people did who tried to solve this book. You simply start drawing a map connecting all of the rooms to each other and showing how the whole network works out. But it is a very large and complex network because it has 45 nodes that are all connected in all sorts of strange ways. And of course, you don't just have to get to room 45, you need to find the fastest way there. And even if you do take that approach, there are some obstacles in your path because some rooms seem to be much harder to get to than others. That being said, from what I understand, the mapping approach is actually a lot easier than taking the problem-solving approach where you look at the clues in the room and the text and try and solve it that way. Because a lot of them are just very obscure and require some inference, they require wordplay, they require all sorts of tricks. Because the author was very experienced with puzzle making and included puzzles of all sorts of varieties and even included some of his own invention. So there was just a real cornucopia of types of problems for you to delve into. I really enjoy this art too. I think it's just very surreal, it has just the right amount of surrealness. It draws you in. It makes you want to stare at the painting or stare at the drawing and try and tease it apart and figure out what all of these little clues mean. It's so great. Some of them could be inspiration for rooms in D&D dungeons as well. It's very lootable in that sense. But if you truly persist, you will eventually find yourself all the way down in room 45, the very center of the maze. And this is where that second problem is. You can see that this room is full of weird objects. You need to decode everything in this room to figure out what the question is. And then to answer that question, you have to look at the path that you've created to room 45 and back, and the rooms along that path will spell out the answer to this problem. Well, they won't spell it out literally, but there will be clues in all of those rooms that will tell you what the answer to this question is. All right, now that we've taken a brief tour through the book, I will do a bit of spoiling. I'll show you how the solution to room number 1 works, which will give you a sense of how these problems tend to function. If you don't want to have any spoilers, just skip this part of the video. Let's read the narration that it starts with. We enter the entrance hall of the maze. They looked carefully at the bronze doors, trying to choose. The uncertainty of visitors is one of my little pleasures. It's easy to get lost, I said helpfully. This can be a sinister place. The sun glared at me through the gateway. Something was ringing behind one of the doors. They spent some time trying to decide what door it was, not understanding that the silences of the maze are as eloquent as the sounds. Decisions, decisions, one said. Too many decisions. The story of my life, another said. We don't want to be late, said a third, opening one of the doors. Nary a soul to be seen, said the first, peering into the gloom. I waited patiently for them to choose which way to go. Into... And then whichever room they choose, you simply turn to that page and the text will segue right into the next paragraph. So what door do we pick given that information and given the clues on here? Well, there's always some red herrings, or there's some information that might be relevant to other puzzles in the maze and not necessarily this one. So you have to examine everything together. What do we notice? There's some scraps of paper on the floor. There is a drawing board right here, which might refer to going back to the drawing board every time you have to start the whole book over again. There's 4 doors here, and there are some symbols on them. There is a drum, a cup, a bottle of milk, and an apple. And there's some words above the doors: story, fable, tale, and yarn, probably referring to the fact that you are beginning your new tale through the maze. However, when we put all of the information together, there are some clues that point more towards one door than another. Let's go back to the main text over here and read what the characters are saying who are searching through this room looking for the way to go. This character says, the story of my life, and we can see that story is found right above this door over here. The next person says, we don't want to be late. Well, late isn't found over here, but tale is the word late if you rearrange the letters. And the next person says, nary a soul to be seen, and indeed, yarn is the word nary rearranged as well. So story, tale, and yarn are all found in the text. But this one, fable, is not found anywhere, whether in normal form or in a scrambled form. But there are some other pieces of information in the text as well that seem to also point towards this door. For example, up here in the text, it says it's easy to get lost. I said helpfully, this can be a sinister place. Sinister can mean evil, but sinister also means left hand. And if we look at all 4 doors, fable is on the left-hand side, and these 2 are on the right-hand side. So we might say that it narrows it down to one of these 2 doors. Now on these 2 doors, we have 2 symbols. We have drums and a cup, and the drums is in shadow, and the cup is in the light. So perhaps that's an indication that of these 2 doors, this is the better one. So that's the sort of problem that you might run into while working your way through this book. The fact that fable is the word that is not found in the text is probably the biggest clue, but there's often a bunch of minor supporting clues pointing you in the same direction. And it's often very obscure trying to figure out exactly what the author is going for, because there's many ways to interpret a lot of the information on each page. Here's another example of a problem that stumped a lot of people. If you take the mapping route and you just try and find all the connections between all the rooms and map it all out, you run into a problem, which is that there does not seem to be any way to get to room 17. All of these rooms go to 42, 37, 5, 15, but you go through the whole book, there's no way to get to room 17, and the problem is unsolvable. But sometimes you just need to look much more carefully at a page to figure out where a hidden door might be. A very D&D type of solution. And as a final example, here's a little bit of the puzzle from room 45, where we have to look at all of these clues and piece together a sentence or a question that it is asking. And I don't feel too bad about giving part of this away because, as I said, it is so brutal that no one in the world was able to figure it out during the initial contest. There's a number of words hidden in this drawing, and you need to figure out what they are by examining the images. And here's an example of one of the words that's hidden over here. What's going on this table? We have a number of logs on this big piece of paper with a sun over here and the words I am, and then a drawing of a guy holding a spear down there. What's going on up here to begin with? Well, we have 4 pieces of wood that have all been stacked in a row. So what is that? It's a wood row. And what's it right next to? It's next to a sun. Woodrow and a sun. What's missing there? Woodrow Wilson, like the president. So the word will is missing from these symbols up here. So now look down here. We have the words I am and a hand shaking a spear. Well, that's probably Shakespeare, right? So I am Shakespeare. Well, what does that give us? How does that help us? Well, again, it is missing a word. What is it missing? Just like before, it's missing the word will. William Shakespeare. So this information here and this information down here tells us that all of this together is giving us the word will, which will just be part of the problem or the question that this room is asking that we have to put together. I know. It's pretty ridiculous, but that's how this book rolls. To be perfectly honest, this book is way too difficult for me. A lot of the problems seem far too abstruse and bizarre for me to ever figure out. But I really enjoy the art, I like the theme, and part of the fun of it for me is reading through the whole book, puzzling over a few pages, and then, to be honest, going and looking up the solution and seeing how it was supposed to fit together. That being said, I think it is a really fun book as a novelty and could be a great gift for anyone who enjoys D&D and puzzle books in general. I've heard rumors for a long time that Christopher Manson could be writing a sequel to it, but it has never actually come out. He said he has created one with, I think, 100 plus rooms, which is crazy. But last I heard, he helped contribute to the video game The Blue Prince, which is another traveling from room to room, solving problems kind of game, which makes me really want to at least investigate that game because I've heard very good things about it. As usual, I will put links down below for where you can pick this up if you are so inclined, and please let me know if you know of any other great adventure books or puzzle books or game books that are off the beaten path because I love investigating stuff like that. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.